Happy New Year, everybody. On this first day of 2026, I want to visit with you about one of the most important subjects you'll ever consider in your life, and that is the idea of habits. I want to begin by sharing something I received in a thank you note this fall, and it had a quote in it from Victor Hugo, and this is how it goes. My coat and I live comfortably together. It has assumed all my wrinkles. I have a lot of wrinkles. It does not hurt me anywhere. It has molded itself on all my deformities. I have a lot of deformities. It is complacent to all my movements, and I only feel its presence because it keeps me warm. Old habits and old coats and old friends are the same thing. Victor Hugo. And then it says, and at the bottom of this little note to me, it says, you are my coat. And that just kind of blows my mind to think that somehow I could be shaped and molded to someone's wrinkles, someone's deformities, and they would still experience love when they experience me. And that's really what I want to visit with you about. The idea and the possibility of my habits having something that would change and transform me, that somehow people experience the very best of me and the love of God through me and through you in this concept of something called habits. Now, there's a man by the name of William James who wrote a little book over 100 years ago called The Principles of Psychology. In one of those chapters, 100 years ago, he talked about the concept of habits. And he says that you and I are capable of habits because of something called plasticity. And plasticity is when something has a shape or a form and it's weak enough to yield to pressure, but it's strong enough not to yield too much. In other words, it is both stable, but yet capable of change. Now, that's because of plasticity. Now, he used the example of a garment, of a coat, or of shoes, that when it is brand new and you put it on, it doesn't fit or feel nearly as good as after you've worn it for a few times. Because after a few times, the tissue changes and it conforms to you. And he calls that the habit of cohesion. Now, paper has plasticity. If I had a piece of paper here and folded it one time, increased it, and folded it again, increased it, it would almost naturally fold so much easier every time because of plasticity. The same as your body. Your body has what they call neuroplasticity. Now, here's the premise I want to lay out to you, that it is possible for you to grow and change and to become someone who is a conveyor and a bringer of love to other people's lives in all of your habits. Now, some people don't like the idea of habits. They kind of get habits a bad rap. They think, I don't want to be a habit kind of person. I certainly want to marry someone who loves me just habitually. They say, I love you 2 or 3 times a day out of habit. I don't robotic and mechanical and militaristic. I mean, I don't want my life to be transformed just by these habits. Man, that's nothing. Well, here's what you need to understand. William James put it this way. Habits are inevitable in your life. That if your life has any shape, any form, any character, good or bad, is because of the habits, the formation of habits in your life. Your life itself is this compilation of a massive number of habits. Take a little baby. When a baby's starting to learn to walk. At first, it's very cumbersome. They have to think very intensely about where they're going to put their foot, just on purpose so they don't fall, and they'll really work on their balance. The same with putting on their clothes for the first time, or learning how to brush their teeth, or a 15-year-old when they're learning how to drive. At first, it's just 10 and 2, right? So robotic. But then after years of habit and the repetition of those practices over and over and over again, all of a sudden, they don't even think about it. And they could do it without thinking and pay attention to more wonderful and glorious things. See, that's the power of habit. The habits done rightly always lead to freedom. When I was in the 8th grade, I took guitar lessons for a few months, and I didn't master anything, but I did come out with a couple of songs that I can still play this day. One of them is Blackbird by the Beatles, if you ever heard of it, so some of you might, and the other is Amazing Grace. Now, if the band was to allow me to play that one weekend and worship Amazing Grace on a classic guitar, it'd be very robotic, very mechanical, and you would fall asleep. But if Chris Bohan took that exact same guitar, man, because he has mastered that guitar, he and the guitar become one, and he would play Amazing Grace with passion and with love and with joy. You would come out of your seats clapping, praising God, some just crying tears of joy. And that's what good habits will do for you. Good habits give you a power. They bring joy to your life and enable you to be creative, to love others well, to give people gifts, and to have meaning and purpose in your life. See, habits are the compilation of your values. They embody your values. If you want to grow, if you want to become strong, if you have a better relationship, you're going to have to reform your values, reform what you believe in. And I don't mean doing this because somebody tells you to do this or somebody tells you to do that. That there's something inside of you. You have this essence of who you want to become, that you want to do things habitually on purpose because of this vision you have for your life. And your habits really are wise choices. They're the choices that you make. The choice to not allow me to be served to serve my habits, but my habits to serve me. Not for me to serve my neural pathways in my brain, but for the neural pathways in my brain to serve me habitually. So the question is, how do I know what is a good habit? Now, this thing here called the Bible, this book is a compilation of habit formation. It is about new habits, the habit and the practice of tithing, the practice of the Sabbath, the practice of giving to the poor. This entire book, but the primary habit, this book lies down in Deuteronomy chapter 6, where it says this: the Lord our God is one. Then it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Now, what does that mean, to be on your hearts? It means that they are so embodied as a value within me that I become the incarnation of love. That when I see someone, just any human being, that automatically the first thing that happens that comes out of me is just the habit of love. I speak love to them. I speak hope, encouragement, words of challenge, words of grace, words of mercy, words of forgiveness. I mean, everything I do for them comes just in the nature of love because it becomes second nature. See, when something becomes a habit, it becomes second nature. Breathing to me, it's just second nature. Over time, eating healthy has just become second nature. Exercise has just become second nature. When someone becomes a nun, a lot of times they'll begin to wear something called a habit. And don't worry, I'm not asking you to do that if you want to have good habits in your life. But these nuns automatically put these habits or clothe themselves with these habits automatically as a physical expression of a spiritual discipline, a spiritual habit in their life. The Apostle Paul in Colossians 3 says, clothe yourselves with compassion, with gentleness, with humility. There's our word from that last series, with kindness, and with patience. Now, what does it mean, clothe yourself with all these attributes? He's saying to put them on. Put them on so regularly. They naturally flow out of you. It's just a part of who you are. It is second nature. Well, how do I do that? Well, Moses goes on. He says, here's what you do. He says, these commandments I give you on your hearts, impress them on your children. Verse 7, talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands, bind them on your foreheads, write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. In other words, create this environment where you have all these little cues and all of these little reminders to love God and to love others just habitually. I mean, loving others becomes a habit. Now, there's something what I need to give you. That is that habits, there's a danger. There's two dangers of habits. One is that you ignore them. You just ignore them. And then all of a sudden you develop these desires that create habits that enslave you, like the prodigal son. The prodigal son, it was just sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? I mean, wine, wild living, and women. That's all it was for him. Again, it was just out of control. But the opposite is also true. The older son, and that he got really intentional about his habits. I mean, he was just on point, and he became so prideful about it, it didn't lead him toward love. In fact, he became less loving. And the interesting thing is, the story of the prodigal son, Jesus is telling it to Pharisees who had very disciplined the practice of fasting and of tithing, but it led them to be less loving. So the question you have to ask, Do my habits lead me toward love? Do they lead me to freely love, to honestly love, and sincerely love another human being? That's the question you have to ask. Not for the purpose of being prideful and that I have these list of habits that I do, but to leverage the very best in me, the way God has wired me, so the person on the other end experience the best of me and they experience the experience of love. Now, my wife, and some time ago when she and I would get in an argument and we had this kind of heated discussion where things didn't go my way and whatever because she didn't agree with me. Sometimes I would get kind of clam up, I would withdraw, and I would just wouldn't talk to her because I was right and she was wrong. After all, I'm the expert on relationships, right? And she's supposed to conform and agree with everything that I say. But over time, you know what I've learned to do? I've learned to stay engaged and to listen, to not run away, to not hide, to not shut down, and to respond openly, honestly, and to stay connected and engaged with her. In other words, I've learned the habit of learning how to love her. Now, she still does it better than me, but it's becoming a habit in me because I want to find that again. I want to become my wife's coat. My coat and I live comfortably together. It has assumed all my wrinkles. It does not hurt me anywhere. It has molded itself on all my deformities. It is complacent to all my movements, and I only feel its presence because it keeps me warmed. Old coats and old friends and good habits are the same thing. I want to be the habit of my wife's coat. Now, so the challenge for you in 2026 is to look, where are my habits lead me toward love and where they lead me away from love? And Moses said this. Look at your hands, he said. Look at your hands. Write this on your hands. So I'm going to encourage you right now, look at your hands. When I look at these hands, I noticed that my hands are looking more and more like my dad's hands. And when I look at these hands, I think about my dad. I think about how often my dad used his hands, the habit of my dad's hands, to love me. And I look at these hands and I'm reminded of the hands of God, stretched upon that cross to show me the habit of how much that he loved me. When I look at these hands, I see how I can use these hands now to love other people. And as I look at these hands habitually and I see the calluses on these hands, I'm reminded one of the ways, a habit, one of the ways I love God, and one of the ways I love my family, and one of the ways I love my grandchildren, and one of the ways I love you, my church family, is the habit of using these hands for exercise. So that's what I'm going to do right now. It's a habit. Happy New Year.